Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. I am John Ledyard from pewterreport.com, along with Scott Reynolds, also from pewterreport.com, today to talk about the defensive tackle class in this NFL draft. Scott, we got through it. We did it, Scott. We watched these guys, and oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh, thank God for Vita Vea. Thank God for Ndamukong Suh's return. It's rough, Scott. Not a great class.
Yeah, John, it's not a great class. I mean, I don't think there's any defensive tackle worth taking in the first round, right? I mean, I agree. I think we can kind of make that statement early. I think that's the guy right there that's probably going to go first. Christian Barmore from Alabama, Roll Tide. But I don't see him as a first rounder, and neither did our good friend of the show, Warren Sapp, Hall of Famer, who was on here and had some really revealing statements about Christian Barmore, a guy that he personally worked out at the Yo Murphy Performance Compound here in Tampa. And Sapp got so frustrated, he actually left the workout and said he asked him to use his right hand, and Barmore used his left hand. He's like, no, the other right, dummy, And I mean, that's kind of red flags right there. Just
you can see it on tape too. I mean, there's just jumping off sides on fourth downs. Dylan Moses is yelling at him and tackling his own teammates on looking for, he's just kind of focused. Just the focus seems to be lacking on tape. The consistency.
He's got a highlight reel, right? I mean, he's got some highlights, but man, there's some lowlights too. And John, we had Levi Onwuzurike from Washington as our first round pick to the Buccaneers, and that was in our second mock draft. I believe the second mock draft.
I think it was our second one. Yeah, I think it was second, but
correct. And and in doing more of a deeper dive into that, yes, the Bucs like him, but boy, I think he's probably a second round guy. And keep in mind, when the Bucs are picking 32nd overall, they're actually picking a guy with the second round grade, because John, we've talked about it before, and it's true. There might be, depending on the team, they might only have 15 or 20 guys, maybe 22 guys that carry a true first round grade in this draft and pretty much every draft. So by the time you're picking 32nd, you're already on to your second round guys. Now, Levi Onwuzurike, probably not the 32nd best player in the draft. I think we can say that.
Yep.
So even though the Buccaneers will be picking a second round player at 32, and we say he might be a second round guy, maybe you might even have him a little bit later, he's not really worth taking at 32. I think that's safe to say.
Right, exactly. So we'll dive deep into the defensive tackle class from a valuation standpoint and an evaluation standpoint. So we'll look at the traits and what makes each player tick, and then we'll also look at the value part of it. Where do you want to draft these guys in order to get the best value for what they bring to the table? We'll also talk about a little mock draft that came out this week. It's Schrager mock week, Peter Schrager mock week, which means some wild things happen for all 32 teams in Peter Schrager's annual mock drafts, and the Bucs had some wild things happen to them in his mock draft today. So we'll dive into all that on the show, talk about possibilities for the Bucs at 32 overall, and it's all brought to you by our friends over at Celsius.
John, we always talk about Celsius and the energy that it brings and the crash that it doesn't bring, which is what makes Celsius really special, along with the fact that there's no sugar, no preservatives. But the thing I want to focus on today, John, is the flavor. The flavor, they nail the flavors. When it says orange, it tastes like an orange. When it says grape, it tastes like a grape. My lovely wife, Ashley, loves the watermelon, and it tastes like watermelon, even though it's not my favorite flavor, it's hers. The peach vibe, it's got that fuzzy peach flavor to it. It's phenomenal. The blueberry pomegranate, John, it tastes like blueberry pomegranate. The scientists at Celsius nail the flavors. This is not just a great energy drink. It's a great tasting energy drink. Now I'm going to tell you how to get it. make sure you click on those Celsius banners on PeterReport.com. They'll take you to Amazon. It's the best place to get it. Why? Because you can buy in bulk and save money. If you want to try a can, maybe you want to try orange. John, which flavor are you rocking today?
I'm rocking creamsicle today, or the orangesicle. The orangesicle today.
And it tastes like an orange creamsicle. It does.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
So if you want to grab either one of these cans or maybe try a different flavor, you can find out where to get it by going to Celsius.com. Click on that store locator tab and then type in your address. And then whether it's a convenience store, whether it is a Walmart, a Target, whether it's a grocery store or a health and fitness store, all those locations will pop up and they'll tell you exactly where to go in your neighborhood so you can try Celsius for yourself.
Yep, it's a great product. It's great stuff. What isn't so much great stuff was Peter Schrager's mock draft today. He has the Bucs going Davis Mills, Stanford quarterback, number 32 overall. I share Jason Parker's sentiments here, not only in terms and mock drafts, I don't really care what you do.
Yeah.
It's all good and fun, and we got to make the most out of the time before the draft. But I think you and I feel very confident in saying the Bucs won't take a quarterback at 32 and wouldn't take Davis Mills anyway, even if they were taking – well, maybe if they were taking a quarterback. But they aren't taking a quarterback at 32.
Yeah, and I think too when you look at quarterback, you've gone on record saying just don't even draft one this year. There really isn't one worth taking, and I've already expressed my love, my man crush on Jerkovic from Boston College for next year. I think he's just an Arians type fit. So it surprised me. Did the story this morning when I saw that news come out, I was like, holy smokes! It's surprising that they have 6 quarterbacks, that Peter Schrager has 6 quarterbacks going in the first round. Davis Mills, they might like him. They might like Kyle Trask, but 32. I don't know how you could justify that. I think maybe the only way the Bucs could justify that is if they had some intel that one of these guys wouldn't make it to the second round, one of the guys they liked, and in this case, Mills. And then maybe you're getting a quarterback and value the 5th-year contract. But, man, there's no way that Davis Mills is the 32nd best player in this draft, John.
No, there's no way it's going to happen for a couple of reasons. One, we've talked about the fact that the Bucs are in to win now. Like, they want to win this season.
Yeah.
They want to build this roster over the next 2 years to be as competitive as it possibly can be under Tom Brady. And then think about the future. And the other big part of it is they don't even know who the coach is going to be for the next quarterback. They don't know that it's going to be Bruce Arians. How do you draft a quarterback with a pick like that? In the day 3, okay, that's just you're trying to see if there's talent there. I get that. But in the first round, like in the first round,
you asked Todd Bowles. Which quarterback do you want, Todd?
Yeah, right. Which one would you least like to face, Todd?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying Todd Bowles would be the next head coach of the Buccaneers.
Oh, right.
So,
True. Yeah. So maybe that could be. Maybe it could be Todd. And again, but who's going to be Todd's OC? Is it going to be Byron? Is Byron going to get hired away? So there's just so many variables that you don't want to have to think about right now. I would be shocked if the Bucs select a quarterback in the first 3 rounds. I think they're all in on making this roster the best it can possibly be to win another one and maybe another one after under Tom Brady. I think that's their full focus is on that right now. And Davis Mills, I know Dane talked about him yesterday on the show, and Dane likes him, Scott. He talked about how he thought Davis Mills was a future starter in the NFL. Might need some time, but he likes him. I watched another Davis Mills game last night. Man, I'm not sure I feel the same way. I mean, I love Dane. I love his stuff, and he's smarter than I am. I watch Davis Mills, and I see definitely a guy that can make throws, but so many bad decisions on his tape. I watched the UCLA game. He threw 3 picks in that game. He also threw 3 touchdowns, over 400 yards. He definitely made throws late in the game, made some throws under pressure. I gave him a ton of credit, but consistency. It's everything at that position. Yeah. You're telling me a guy who started, I think, 11 games and has shown that much inconsistency. I don't know that I want to trust that at any point in the draft, let alone before day 3. That would be a lot to ask for me.
Well, and the thing, too, is there some value in getting the successor for Tom Brady already, in the fold, whoever that may be? Yeah, you could make that argument, right? The Packers did that last year in drafting Jordan Love. The problem is we know nothing about Jordan Love. There's no preseason. So they drafted a guy that they still truly know nothing about outside of the handful of practice reps that he got during the season, because your starter gets the majority of those reps in practice. And there was a truncated training camp for all teams. So The Packers right now, John, spent a first-round draft pick on the supposed heir apparent to Jordan Love or to Aaron Rodgers in Jordan Love from Utah State, and they know nothing about this guy. Mm-hmm. And yes, I understand the logic, right? I mean, I've seen it happen a couple times, right? There's nothing better than to pass the baton from Joe Montana to Steve Young, from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, to have that continuity at the quarterback position. But here again is Green Bay. Their plan could be completely foiled if Jordan Love is not very good. And I just don't see the value in drafting a guy at 32 that will not see the field
for 2 years. Yeah, at least.
Year. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And even if he did somehow see the field, like, what is he going to beat out Blaine Gabbert? How quickly is QB6 in this draft going to beat out Blaine Gabbert? We've said it over and over. It just feels like, I think they put him out there. The Bucs are a hot team. It's buzzy to give him a quarterback.
Sure.
You haven't seen Davis Mills in the first round. It gets reactions.
Yeah.
For some people, that's part of the job, and that's how they want to do it. Traeger does a lot of things well. I've said for years, I think his mock draft is just incendiary. That's all of it is, which is fine.
He's a conversationalist. I think he likes the conversation more
absolutely.
than maybe the analysis.
And I like I said, Peter does some good things. I just don't. I think it's hard for guys like that when you say, okay, talk about the draft in April. That takes a lot of legwork to talk about the draft, man. It is not an easy topic to just go on. You just can't. And so it's hard. And I think that he gets kind of caught in the middle of that, which is difficult, I'm sure. Yeah. Long Lost Glazer says, stop wasting our time with quarterback talk. Let's get to a real need with the D tackle class. In line with what Long Lost Glazer is saying so politely, Tom Bucksman says D tackle class sucks. And that's true. But there is hope. I don't want to say it sucks in terms of there's not high-end playmakers. So in the first round, Scott and I are probably going to pass on all of these guys, I think.
Yeah.
But later in the draft, the Bucs need to draft a D tackle. Like, no mistake about it. One of these guys that we're going to talk about today is probably going to be a Buccaneer.
Right.
And fans need to understand that they're probably going to be a Buccaneer at some point in the draft. And so what I come back to is this, Scott. The most commonly mocked, according to grindingthemocks.com, the most commonly mocked players to the Bucs right now are Christian Barmore at 30 in the first round. Christian Barmore and Davion Nixon. Those are the top guys right now. I think Najee Harris is tied with Davion Nixon for second. So technically he's tied there. But Christian Barmore, by far, I think 16% of mocks since December have Christian Barmore going to the Bucs at 32. Obviously, still a lot of players being thrown to the Bucs right now at this point. They're all the way back at 32. So you're going to see a huge variety. So let's talk about Barmore to start things off. Oh, we came into the Barmore conversation a while back, Scott, and we said, okay, there's a chance this guy could be probably going to be the first D tackle off the board, but there's a chance he could be there 32 for the Bucs. Today, you had people saying, Jim Nagy, I believe, of the Senior Bowl was saying he's going to go early in the draft, maybe even top 15. Teams like him more than the draft media do. I don't feel like draft media dislikes it, but all that aside, I don't know, what to expect with Barmore, but I think he'll be off the board before the Bucs pick at 32. Do you agree?
I think so. I think there'll be some.
Which means, by the way, that Warren Sapp will have a year off social media.
That's true. That if that happens, that's the case. There's
Bucs fans, you got to hold them accountable.
There's always one dummy out there, though, and some teams are. There's multiple stupid teams. The Bucs have been that in the past. Exactly. It screams. I'd say Oakland. It screams Las Vegas. It screams John Gruden and Mike Mayock. And so I would not be surprised at all if he goes out to the Raiders, because that is a big need for Las Vegas. And when you look at the Cleveland Farrell pick, there's been some questionable decisions.
They've had some moments.
The draft, yes. So to me,
Jonathan Abram.
Yeah, Jonathan Abram is another one. So I would not be surprised at all if there is a dumb team that picks Christian Barmore out there. Now the thing is people say, why am I ragging on Barmore so much? He had 8 sacks, 9.5 tackles for loss. He's a young guy, sophomore. There's plenty of upside. He had 3 forced fumbles last year. It's not like he can't play. Yep. It's just that the defensive tackle is a position that rarely you see a player come in and dominate as a rookie. And so I don't think that this guy has a lot of instant impact. And I think that he's taking advantage of a very, very weak defensive tackle class. I think that's the only reason why he's considered to be a first rounder or this high. I've heard from Warren Sapp, who's talked to some other people in the NFL, that that the work ethic is not there. He had back surgery this offseason. There are some concerns, and then you see some of the tape. It's just not great. Mm-hmm. The highlight reel. Listen, we can put together a highlight reel for any college player, and show you that only, and really whet your appetite. But you gotta go into the tape, And the first thing I do is I start with the highlight reel, and I see what the player has in terms of their best tape. This is their best. How long is it? How many plays are there? How impactful are there? Do I see traits? Do I see the traits that are akin to the position? And then do those traits translate to what the Bucs are doing offensively or defensively? Right. That's where I start. Right. And once my interest is piqued, then I start going into the actual game tape, watching every single rep by rep. Because as Rod Marinelli told me, and sacks are important, right? Sack fumbles are even more important. Pressures can be just as important, because a pressure can lead to an interception. A pressure can lead to an incompletion on third down that leads to a punt, right? And the thing is there was a player like Styles White back in the day for the Buccaneers that I think he had 8 sacks and like 5 forced fumbles. And statistically, you think, wow, he led the team in sacks. He had a great year. No, he made 8 plays. He made 8 plays, because that's one thing Marinelli said is a sack, while it can be critical, is just one play out of perhaps 50 reps or 60 reps that player might play. What are they doing on the other plays, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, John, you can't scout from the stat sheet, especially with interior defensive linemen, because they can affect what's happening. And we've seen Vita Vea, literally have 1 tackle for loss and 3 tackles, but he had a monster game, right? Even though the stat sheet doesn't scream it, even though there's not a sack or a forced fumble on there. So especially with defensive tackles, you can't just look at the stats and say, wow, here's 8 sacks and 3 forced fumbles. It's a good start. It's better than not having any sacks, right?
Sure. It doesn't necessarily mean
it's not the end all be all.
Right. It doesn't necessarily mean you have that skill right now to accomplish things 1v1. And the tough part about this is, really, on paper, if there weren't the other stuff that we've kind of heard, and we've kind of also seen the lapses on tape, the technique, there really is, Barmore's skill set, honestly, is kind of ideal for what the Bucs would be looking for in some ways right now. It's just a matter of, if you're going to spend a pick that high in the draft, you want to know value-wise that you're getting a long-term starter out of that. Right. And that's where I'm not sure. Could he come in this season and give them some pass rush reps situationally, not having to start? That would be helpful for them. Yes. Is this probably as good of an environment for Christian Barmore as any environment in the league to grow and to get better, with guys like Sue and Will Golston around you, then Nacho around you to help keep you accountable? Obviously Vita too. I think it definitely is. Jason Pierre-Paul working with those types of players. I mean, I think if there's a avenue for success for Barmore, it's landing in a place like that, in a place with a rich defensive line development history, especially recently, with a lot of veteran guys. I think of a place even like Pittsburgh, as places that he could go. And I think I would trust the environment to help cultivate him a little bit more than where he's at now. But right now, he's a situational pass rusher. I think that's where he's game shown the most this past season. He did get better as this past year went on. The last final stretch of games was really impressive from him. The tough part is inside a defensive tackle, whether we like it or not, if you want to start full-time in the NFL, you have to be able to play the run. Yeah. On the edge, they'll let it go. It's not as difficult. You have less runs that depend on you to hold up and be great. Right. Inside, you've got to do it. You've got to play. And that starts here. It starts here, and it starts with these things, with your hands, with your technique. Yep. Those are so vital to recognize blocks and to see them coming and understand concepts and play smart football inside, and then be able to get off of blocks and off of contact, get into guys' pads first before they get into your pads. Yeah. Those are the critical things about – that's kind of like the baseline. Then if you can do other things from there, that's awesome. But there aren't a lot of players that are special enough to be bad technically, bad mentally, bad in run defense, still see the field as full-time players despite those things. That just doesn't happen.
The thing is Bruce Arians gave us the answers to the test, right? He said they're looking for 3 things when it comes to defensive players: fast, physical, and do you love football, right? And you look at a guy like Jason Pierre-Paul, right? Fast, physical, loves football. Devin White, fast, physical, loves football. Same with Levante David. Same with Antoine Winfield. You can go down the line, right? And Ndamukong Suh, not as fast as he once was, but physical and loves football. And so and I've seen it too. I've seen, the John Lynch's, granted they were young, but John Lynch, Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks in the same locker room with Eric Curry, who was a bust first-round pick out of Alabama. Not trying to do a Crimson Tide comparison there, but he was
he a D tackle?
He was a defensive end.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he and John Copeland were the defensive end duo back in the day at Alabama. And Copeland went to the Bengals. The Bucs got Eric Curry. And Eric Curry just didn't love football. As John Gruden was famous for saying, there are two types of guys in the NFL. NFL players and NFL playas. And Eric Curry was a player. He was not a player. He didn't love the game. He loved being a Buccaneer, but he didn't love playing for the Buccaneers. And so sometimes you can have those great leaders around a player, and if they're going to suck, they're going to suck, and there's not much you can do to suck the suck out of that player.
Right, exactly. Good points. And that kind of covers Barmore. I want to get to some of these questions because we do have some good comments here. Long Lost Glazer wants to know, could Carlos Basham, well, you're going to send Scott into a spiral bringing up Carlos Basham, or Dio Odin Igbo play as a 3-4 DN, trying to think outside the box for a value need match at number 32. I'll let Scott
talk about that, John.
Yeah, I'll let Scott talk about these guys in a second. I do want to say one thing about 3-4 defensive ends as Bucs fans think about them. It's kind of a dead position. I know Will Golston's technically on the roster and people see him that way. But the reason Will Golston is on the roster is because the Bucs came in, the new regime came in, they saw him and they thought this guy can be an interior pass rusher for us. He's not been developed that way, but he can do that for us. And he's been his best self over the past 2 years under Todd Bowles, getting to play a lot more 3 technique and being an interior pass rusher on long and late downs, getting to see the field and having some opportunities there. So he's not a great player or a game changer. If he had been developed better early in his career, he might have been a better player than what he is now. He's a good, solid player. And so I don't think the Bucs will technically try to find a Will Golston replica in this draft if he moves on next year. They're just going to find interior defensive linemen. You're playing a nickel with 2 interior guys almost all the time anyway. Even when you're in base, Sue can play. I mean, a lot of guys can play. You're not two-gapping anymore. It's not like you have to find the Lawrence Guy types and the Brent Urban types and those kind of guys in today's NFL. You're just trying to find the best guys to play inside the tackles in the NFL. So that's kind of the standard. Now, the question is, Scott, do Basham and Odin Igbo meet that standard for the Bucs?
I think it's somewhat close. John, you and I were talking about this. I just kind of made it my personal quest to find out who would be the ideal fit if they were to replace Will Golston. Just out of my own curiosity. The reason why I'm not really hot on this subject is because if you were to take all of the positions from outside linebacker to middle linebacker to free safety on this team, to the will linebacker that Levante David plays, it's actually the money backer. If you were to take all those positions and label them 1 through 12, let's say, including the nickel corner, right? So if you were to do that, the defensive end, that 5 tech or 4-eye defensive end that you're looking at is the last guy on the list.
Right. Because he's got to be able to play at 3 or in the A gaps or the B gaps on passing downs to be valuable. Yeah,
that's right. And so what Will Golston typically does, and it is valuable. It's not like you don't want him on your team. You do. And he plays it quite well. But really what that position is that's the guy that typically takes on that right tackle, tight end double team and anchors at the point of attack in the running game and will free up either Vita Vea for a one-on-one if the guard comes down and works with the tackle to block him at the point of attack. So you got to have a stout body. And do the Buccaneers want more pass rush there? Yeah, because Will Golston is a guy that will get you 1 or 2 sacks a year from that position. But to that point, I think the Vanderbilt kid probably has the better body type to do it. Whereas Carlos Basham, for a player of his size, Boogie Basham, 280 pounds, does not play like it. I think Shaq Barrett actually is more physical at 252 in terms of throwing his body into right tackles than Boogie Basham. And I want to like Boogie Basham. I've watched so much of his tape, and the flashes are there. It's like when he wants to be good, he is. But I've seen him get pushed around way too much one-on-one with a college tackle, even with the tight end sometimes. In double teams, they'll wash him out. And it's like, you're like, where's the size? I mean, at times, it's like, am I watching a slower, Aziz Ojulari, who's like 240 pounds, the way he's getting pushed around. So I don't think either one of those guys is a great fit. Matter of fact, I've trying to sell John on the notion that Peyton Turner from Houston at 270 pounds, who did play some 4-eye defensive ends, some 5 technique in a 3-4, is better suited, even though he's undersized to 270. I think even Chauncey Golston from Iowa, no relation, it is that type of player. He could do that if he added more size, because Will Golston's about 300 pounds.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a man. And
right. He's huge. Yeah. He's a big dude, Will Golston. Right. Now that's where it gets interesting, because you don't see many guys 270 playing inside, and Golston, I think, is 267 or something like that. And so you've got guys Chauncey Golston, right? Yeah. Chauncey Golston. So you've got two guys that would, there's really, again, and especially because Peyton Turner has played inside a little bit situationally, but he'd have to change kind of his role a little bit. Golston has played inside at the Senior Bowl. I do think Golston could be a fit for the Bucs. He would be. I think that, because I think that they wanted Anthony Nelson ideally to be able to play inside, and it really hasn't gone that way. But or be effective on the edge. I think they want another guy that adds to the chaos and allows them to do some different things with Jason Pierre-Paul.
And I'm gonna tell you something right now. I like Chauncey Golston better than Davion Nixon.
Interesting, because Davion Nixon,
especially for the Bucs,
Davion Nixon, second most mocked player to the Bucs, tied with Najee Harris for second most mocked player to the Bucs right now. And so and
the reason I like him is because of the versatility, because he's a defensive end. He played that like big edge position at Iowa, but then more often than not, he got kicked inside as a nickel rusher right next to Nixon, and actually I think had more sacks, had 5.5 sacks to lead the team, where Nixon had 5. So I like Chauncey Golston. He had a great Senior Bowl too, by the way. Hustling, high effort player, high motor, and the fact that he can move along that line. You don't want him to be the Will Golston replacement, down in and down out. You don't want him to be a Vita Vea replacement, down in and down out. But I think with his body type and his physicality, I think that he's more flexible and versatile.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think he's one of the players on day 3 that I think he's going to be there on day 3, and I would target probably for the Bucs. Again, I want guys who can help the pass rush situation as depth. Maybe he is never a full-time player for the Bucs. I can live with that, but give me some juice and some, as a third pass rusher, guys that can do that and give you that with the energy that he plays with, the physicality he plays with.
Oh, and by the way, John,
big fan of that.
Did I mention that the Chauncey Golston, he also has 3 interceptions in his career?
You did not mention that. I did not know that. How did that happen?
And 7. Well, it's because he's aware. He's aware. We talked about it just a couple minutes ago. It's not just the sacks, right? It's how do you affect the passer? Is it a pressure? Sometimes it's getting your hands up. That's one thing Jason Light really wants to see, is that situational pass rush awareness. You can't get to the quarterback, fine. What are you doing to affect the passer? Pass breakups, right? Yeah. Interceptions, tip pass at the line, and catch it. That's something that Chauncey Golston has done at Iowa, to the tune of 7 pass breakups, 3 fumble recoveries, 3 interceptions. That's pretty rare for an interior defensive lineman or an edge player, which is what he's doing both at Iowa. And
I tend to agree with you that I think Dayo Odenigbo, to me, I'm just not very interested in drafting him. I think he could be a fit. I just don't really. His tape doesn't really show me anything special, and he just tore his Achilles in January. So
he's going to
that's an injury that's tough. That's the one injury still I think that can get guys still. So I just wouldn't be interested in drafting him. Then Basham, I think he's an edge. I think he's a 4-3 D end. I say 4-3. We'll talk about that in a second here. I think he's a D end, plays with his hand down. That's what he does in the end. I don't think he drops, and the Bucs like to drop their guys. That to me is his type of fit. So I want to address this question real quick. Mark Fisher, he asked if he can donate to the website. You can actually do super chat donations during the show. And I think there's a $sign or something in the bottom corner of the screen or something like that. Our screen looks different than yours, but you can leave a super chat donation as well. But Mark asks, Scott and John, do we have a 3-4 or 4-3, or are we a hybrid? Your language fits a 4-3. I'll tell you what the Bucs have. They have a 4-2, like every other team in the league, because that's a 4-2-5 is what everybody plays, because you're in nickel almost all the time in today's NFL. Now, technically, the Bucs have a 3-4 when they are in base, just not going to be in base that often in today's NFL, just the reality of what it is. So yes, they have a 3-4. You'll also see them line up differently depending.
Mm-hmm.
Always have Will Golston locked at a 5 and Will Stu at a 3 and Vita on the nose. It looks different depending on how the opponent lines up. It is not as simple as it once was in today's NFL because NFL offenses are so different and so complex. The terms 3-4 and 4-3, although we still use them, we really, what I'm talking about with Basham, when you're talking about an edge defender, you're really just talking about who can drop and who can't, because some 3-4 teams will drop their edge guys, and the Bucs are one of those teams. Some don't, and so it really doesn't matter.
Pierre-Paul got a pick, right?
Yeah, you got a couple of picks, right? Well, one wasn't in coverage, but yeah.
Yeah, Shaq Barrett got a pick in 2019.
Both of those guys were over, I believe both of them were, I know Shaq was over 100 snaps they dropped into coverage this past season. That's a lot of snaps for an edge rusher. That's too many in my opinion.
Really, John, when you think about it, it's almost 2 full games. If you're a defensive player and you're playing 50 snaps, they play a little bit more, but it's a game and a half to 2 games worth of just dropping in coverage if you add them all up.
It is. It's crazy. So that is why I mentioned the trait for Basham. I think if it matters to Bulls as much as it looked like it did this past season, it hasn't always mattered to Bulls like that. But if that's the direction he wants to go and he thinks it's important at that position. But the other thing Scott and I go back to is he drafted Anthony Nelson. I mean, Anthony Nelson doesn't look or do any of the things that you would think. Like if you asked me to describe what the Bucs are looking for in an edge defender right now, it wouldn't look like Nelson. And he was a day 3 pick, so maybe they just liked some things, and his testing certainly was better than his tape, and so maybe they fell in love with that part of it.
Let me explain the Anthony Nelson pick and why I don't think they're going to go in that type of direction again, because I think that Jason Light was trying to draft Carl Nassib's eventual replacement because he knew that he could only afford either Shaq and Jason Pierre-Paul, but not Carl Nassib. He could get 2 out of the 3. Nassib was going to be the guy that left the Bucs last year, and of course he did. He went out to
good choice, Jason.
Yes, he chose wisely. Went out to Vegas, didn't earn his money at all. Hardly saw some playing time. But the thing about Carl Nassib that made him a fit in this style of defense was he was long, he was rangy, very physical, and he helped push the pocket. And remember, Jason Pierre-Paul missed the first 8 games of Shaq Barrett's 19.5 sack season. And Shaq will be the first one to tell you, Carl Nassib's pressure in the face of the quarterback coming from the left side against the right tackle allowed Shaq to get a stationary target because the quarterback couldn't roll and go in Carl Nassib's direction. So the problem is Anthony Nelson just isn't the physical presence that Carl Nassib is. He tested better. He's a better athlete, but it doesn't really translate into the type of production. And listen, Carl Nassib was a 3rd-round pick, and he gives you 3rd-round pick type production. He'll give you, maybe 5 or 6 sacks a season. That's about what he averaged in Tampa. The Raiders, I think, wish that he would have given them 5 or 6 sacks last year. But we haven't seen in 2 years Anthony Nelson come close to even being what Carl Nassib is. And you like the length, you like the size at around 260, 265, but a guy who's 6'2", 250, barely 6'2", and Shaq Barrett outperforms Anthony Nelson.
Right. And so I think that, in answer to Mark's question, it doesn't matter quite as much. It really matters for the type. What's your type at those positions rather than what formation are they? And that really has kind of gone out of style. It's more like, how does the defensive coordinator use his guys? Same thing with safeties, like, free safety, strong safety. Well, today's NFL, there's almost interchangeable for a lot of teams. Right. How does a team, do they rotate their safeties a lot? How do they use them? Do they have the one safety play? Man, do they play 3 safeties like the Saints do all the time? Those are kind of the more the considerations rather than 3-4-4-3, things like that. So just wanted to touch on that real quick so our language is all on the same point.
I'll just say this just to put a period on it. In 4-3 defensive ends, you can get away with the Boogie Basham. You can get away with a Robert Ayers. You can get away with a Cam Jordan, those big 280, 285-pound physical guys. But typically when you're a 3-4 defense, what you're looking for, those outside linebacker positions, you can have a big guy there. Jason Pierre-Paul's 6'5", 265 pounds. But you got to have some juice, some speed, some explosiveness. And if you look at Shaq Barrett and Cameron Jordan, they're 2 completely different players, 2 completely different body styles. Shaq Barrett would not be good at all in a 4-3 defense as a defensive end. He has to kind of play off the ball in that role. Cam Jordan would not be good as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. So that's the big comparison right there on the edge.
Right. There's some differences like that. You always want to think about with defensive ends, they're a little more likely to stay inside, and you bring up like if a team went heavier personnel and you brought an extra linebacker onto the field, a defensive end's a little bit more likely to play inside between the tight end and the tackle and play that role. Now the Bucs hang like that inside, so they will leave them a lot of time in there. Shaq does an awesome job at getting skinny through some of those gaps when he tries to get double and things like that. But the Bucs don't really bring another linebacker on the field, even in those situations, very often, unless they're on the goal line. So, and that's when they'll bring really Pat O'Connor and some of those guys in to play those spots and push Barrett outside. So they do count on them a little more than some teams. Some teams feel like they have to have more of a rotation there for that stuff. But enough about that. We do get into the nitty gritty even on this podcast, but a place that we get into that kind of stuff even more, Scott, is on Locker Room. Locker Room is changing the way that we talk about sports. It's the only place for live audio conversations about the takes, rumors, news, and teams you care about. React to sports news as it happens. Gather all your friends and watch parties for the biggest games. Rep your favorite teams and find your community. Better sports talk is just a tap away. Download on the Apple App Store and join the conversation with Locker Room. Right after Scott and I wrap up, Taylor and Matt are going live on Locker Room at 5 p.m. Eastern. So you get to continue the Bucs chat with Taylor and Matt on Locker Room. Just download the Locker Room app, follow Pewter Report. You'll get an invite for when they go live sent out to you, and you'll be able to join those guys for the conversation, jump in, and even audibly voice your thoughts for all those types of things. So be fun stuff with those guys, and then I'll be on there at some point this weekend as well, talking about some things and doing some Q&A as well. So should be fun stuff. This D-tackle class, we've talked about a lot at length. Christian Barmore, Davion Nixon, and we've talked about Levi Onwuzurike too. We haven't talked about him on this show that much, but we've talked about him a good bit in other places. How about the other guys in the class though, Scott? Later on down the board, I think one of the players that could be the best value pick at defensive tackle in this class is Marlon Twepulotu from USC. He's my number 4 defensive tackle. I have a 3rd-round grade on him, so I'm not getting crazy. I just think there's something to be said in a class like this for getting a guy who isn't going to bust. I just don't think he's going to bust. He loves the game. He's physical. He plays zero technique, head up on the center, all the way out to 4-eye at times. He moves around. He plays the run really well. He's developed as a pass rusher this past season. The transformation he had, I watched his 2019 tape, Scott, and I texted you. I was like, he literally looks like an undrafted free agent in 2019. He switched jersey numbers from 51 to 93. He started wearing gloves. He got tape on his forearms. The aesthetic got better. He started doing abs because he lost that power gut that he had in 2019. You look good, you feel good, right? He looked great in 2020. I mean, the transformation was crazy. I honestly had to stop the tape like 3 times. I'm like, am I really watching the same guy? Like, I'm so confused right now. I didn't even look like the same body type, nothing. His tape in 2020 was so much better. Just a player that really, really improved and benefited from playing this past season. I think we might not have known had he opted out for 2020. So glad that he was able to play and show us that on tape. His game against Arizona State, that's some high-level stuff, man. It's some really good stuff. The kind of dominance in a game that you haven't really seen from many defensive linemen in this class. And so I like him. I don't think there's a high ceiling for him. He can hold his own as a pass rusher. He can play run defense really well in a couple different techniques. He's just a tough customer. I like him. I think he's better than Jay Tufele. I know not everybody feels that way, but I'm a fan of Marlon T.
Very similar body types between Tufele and Marlon. You look at almost 6'2", 307 for Marlon Twepulotu, and Jay Tufele 6'2", about 305. So they're almost carbon copies from a body size standpoint. The production, when you look at Tufele, he's probably a little twitchier, has a little bit more of an opportunity maybe on 3rd downs. And I think when you look at Twepulotu, more like a 1st and 2nd down player against the run. And that's okay because we've seen Jason Pierre-Paul come inside on 3rd downs and rush as a defensive tackle alongside Vita Vea. And so maybe you're just getting a defensive tackle for that particular package, in terms of stopping the run. But you do look at the production. Over 12 games, Twepulotu had 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and not even half the games last year. Only played 5, right? Because the Pac-12 got such a late start. Were they going to cancel the season? Did they finally turn the light on? Yeah, they turned it on for 5 games. So they had a truncated season. But in those games, he matched his sack total. 2 sacks in 5 games, and the year before, 2 sacks in 12 games, and had 3.5 tackles for loss and a forced fumble. So you could kind of see, just from a production standpoint, that he was ready to pick up where he left off and even take some big steps in terms of improvement, just based upon that 5-game sample size.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that, there's for very few of these guys, is there a high ceiling in this class? We'll talk about a couple that might have a high ceiling in a second. So to me, the knowledge that you're going to get a guy who can definitely play and help you in the range that Marlon T is supposed to be drafted in, that late 3rd to somewhere in the 4th round, it's just a value, right? You're right. Not going to get a 1st-round player. You're going to get the player you draft there. You draft Christian Barmore in the 1st round, you might end up getting a 2nd or 3rd round player. Like that might be. Yeah. So it's a value proposition to me that attracts me to Marlon T. The other guy, John, I've seen him. Yes.
Let's stay on the West Coast, shall we? Talk about
let's do it. Guy? Who do you want to talk about?
Well, let's go to number 5 on your list.
Oh, no, that's exactly where I was going, actually.
There we go.
I didn't know if you wanted to, but yep. Osa Odigizua. I mean, he's an interesting player to me. I don't know if he's a Bucs fit or not. He's 282 pounds, and you'd never guess by watching him, man. He's strong, and he plays with great leverage. You do not see him get bodied up very often in the run game or knocked off the ball, which is crazy when you consider his size. He is very physical. I can't believe that he doesn't get bodied more than he does, because he doesn't use his hands very well yet. It's very inconsistent. When he stacks guys and sheds them, I mean, he has length. They're over 34-inch arms. Like I said, he's obviously strong. His lower half is unbelievable. He just doesn't use his hands that well yet to this point. He's got to get better getting off the ball quickly. When he does that, the USC game, when they played USC, I mean, he was the first guy off the ball. He was in the backfield all the time. He's got to detach from contact. He gets stuck on blocks. He'll knock the blocker back, but he can't get off and make a play. So he's great at resetting the line of scrimmage. He's very physical, but all the intricacies with his hand have to be developed still. Pass rush moves, things like that. Can he stack and shed more quickly, find the football? Right now, he's like a bull in a china shop, man. And for a 3rd rounder, I love the physicality. I love the physical tools you're getting. He tested pretty well. Thought he had a pretty solid Senior Bowl, but again, can he consistently get off contact a little bit cleaner? He just doesn't get that many clean looks, and the production is affected because of that.
Now, the crazy thing is, I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth here, right? So when you look at the Buccaneers, Jason Light has not drafted a defensive tackle that weighs less than 296 pounds, and that was 7th round Missouri prospect Terry Beckner Jr., and he was 296, didn't make the team. He's drafted Stevie Tuikolabatu, who was around 330 pounds. He's drafted Vita Vea, who is, at the time he was drafted 347 pounds. And then drafted Khalil Davis, who's over 300 pounds. I think 306, I believe, was what he weighed at the combine. So when you look at the UCLA kid, 282 pounds, I just don't see him being a Bucs fit at that size, especially 6'1". He doesn't have the length. Now, the reason I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth is because, Jason Light traded for Steve McClendon, who's 6'4", 280. But, John, if you look at Steve McClendon, there's not an ounce of fat on that guy. That is a grown man. That is a guy that is just pure muscle at 280.
Pure muscle.
So it's a completely different 280 pounds for Odigizua as there is for McClendon, right? And so I think that the Bucs are looking for that Ndamukong Suh type, maybe not necessarily the Vita Vea size, but at least somebody that is in the Khalil Davis and Ndamukong Suh 300+ pound size for their defensive style with Todd Bowles.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. And he is probably, like you said, I don't know that he's a fit, but I think he's a good player for whoever gets him. He'll be a solid player. Another guy, I don't think the lows are not too low on his tape. That's what I'm looking for kind of in those rounds. Like, I don't want the lows to be disaster. And for him, they're not a disaster. He has some tape. He has some plays he could do things a lot better and get better at. But you don't see him getting like totally blown up all the time and things like that, which again, 282 pounds. pretty impressive. So I like Osa. I think he brings something to the table. There is the element of his brother was not in love with the game, apparently. And you know how that goes with teams. Oh, your brother wasn't? You must be exactly like your brother. I don't know whether it's true or not. I know I've talked to people at UCLA. They say Osa is a great kid and loves the game. Certainly looks like it from his tape. So hopefully that doesn't affect his stock when the time comes.
Yeah, well, speaking of undersized defensive tackles, John, number 6 on your list is a guy that is really surging up draft boards and probably will go in the second round. I think he's going to get overdrafted a little bit because Milton Williams from Louisiana Tech at 6'3", 284 ran a blistering 4.62 in the 40-yard dash at his pro day.
His whole athletic experience at the pro day was unbelievable. I mean, 4.6s. I don't.
Yeah, that's like
bounds.
That's like Warren Sapp. Let me see what Warren's his combine number was.
And Warren was heavy though, right? I mean, he was heavier than
Warren Sapp ran a 4.69.
His weight?
His weight was coming out of they had him at 300 pounds.
Yeah, that's completely crazy. Yeah. That's insane. I mean, Milton's, 282, did you say? 284, I forget, something like that.
Yes,
he's around right around the same as Osa and not as long armed as Osa, which I think is important when you're an undersized guy. You want to keep people off your frame. Again, Osa doesn't use his arms very well yet, but the potential is there. Where the flashes are there. When he's able to stack a guy up and he can keep dudes way off his frame, that's a trouble for Milton. He just, again, if you are playing in Conference USA and you're one of the most athletic defensive tackles, not at that level, that even when you get to the NFL, you'll be one of the most athletic defensive tackles in the league.
And actually, I stand corrected. Warren Sapp weighed 281 at the combine.
Oh, wow.
281. Yeah,
so it's very similar.
Yeah, very similar.
In that way only. So I wanted to see, you should be like dominating that level. Like, guys, you should be too quick for anybody to handle you. And against North Texas, there were certainly moments. It was definitely better. But when you're a small school player,
Texas.
Right? I always go to Texas. Right. If you're a small school player, any player, but especially small school guy, I'm going right to the best team you faced.
Yeah.
Who's the best offensive line that you faced, the best offense that you faced? BYU, automatically, right off the bat. So that's the game I start with. I want to know right away. There's no reason to watch him against the worst unless it's the only other tape you have. You want to watch him against the best. That's the only thing that's going to tell you anything. And so he wasn't very good in that game. Just straight up wasn't. Plays his tail off. Body is unbelievable. Athleticism, unbelievable. Effort is great. They definitely could have used him better. He plays out of a square stance sometimes. I think it limits his explosiveness. But for all his traits, there was very little dominance on tape. I think his block recognition is probably among the worst in the league. He would get reached constantly against zone schemes, and BYU runs a lot of zone. He'd get reached constantly just because he didn't decipher. He didn't know what's coming. He didn't know how to step. He needs work with his feet. He needs work with his hands. He needs a lot of work. He can't play right away, but I would still take him late third round, Scott, because you just can't those tools. I mean, he literally is going to go into the NFL as one of the most athletic D tackles in the league. And I know he's small, but he's not so small that he's not like physically outmatched. I don't think 280 pounds guys are playing at 280s in today's NFL inside. That's not the end of the world to me. You just need to coach him technically.
Right. And you mentioned not dominating. He had 4.5 sacks in 10 games last year, you know, and he had 5.5 in 12 games the year prior and no forced fumbles. So you're looking for splash plays. And I think he's a splash athlete that didn't make as many splash plays as you would like. The athleticism splashes, not the production.
Right. So, and is he a Bucs fit? That's the other thing.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I tend to think he and Osa would be guys that might end up being good in the NFL, a little bit of a higher ceiling for both than what we saw in college, but not sure it's going to happen in Tampa Bay or not. We'll have to see. It would be outside the typical structure which they've drafted at D tackle. It would represent a change for sure.
Yeah.
Another guy that would represent a change probably is Tommy Togiai. That's how you say it. Togiai. Tommy Togiai from Ohio State, 296 pounds he got to at his pro day. Good for you, buddy. I don't think you were playing at 296, but that's good that you did that because he also tested like an unbelievable athlete there. Great stuff from him. I think he ran a 7.2 shuttle, I think it was, three cone. I mean, just crazy type of numbers for him for a D tackle to run a 7.2 3 cone.
Right.
That's pretty wild.
He's barely 6'1", 296.
And 31-inch arms?
31-inch arms, yeah. He's got very, very short arms.
So Raptor Arms is explosive for sure, and you can see his ability to bend and dip a little bit. When you're that athletic at that level, I think it helps you to be able. I mean, there just are not very many good guards in college football. Period. They help put them all at tackle, and so he had that kind of advantage built in for him. But another guy who plays very hard, he's very physical. I don't know if he ever has the body type to be a full-time, every down player in today's NFL. That's okay.
He looks like a wave defensive tackle to me.
He does.
He's a rotational guy. 3 sacks last year. He played Ohio State always has like a star-studded lineup. They didn't have Chase Young last year, but 1 forced fumble, 2 pass breakups, pedestrian production, 23 tackles, 3 sacks.
He's never even played more than 300 snaps in a season. He's never hit 300 in a season for 3 years at Ohio State. So
he was really a first-year starter last year. So there just isn't a whole bunch to get excited about because there isn't a whole bunch of tape.
Right. And he played great down the stretch, and they clearly missed him in the national championship game. There's no question about that. But at the end of the day, I just need a little bit more to go off of with him. I think he does have some upside. If I were him, if I were Togi, what I would do is I would focus all my energy on becoming the best pass rusher I can be, because in the NFL, that's where you're going to make your hay if you're a player like that. You could get a second contract, a nice little second contract, by being a good interior pass rusher that doesn't kill a team in run defense. You might not see the field if you kill a team in run defense, your efforts back, but effort that he plays with, the intensity he plays with, if he can become a pass rusher in terms of skill. Right now he just kind of runs into guys, and he's a leverage guy, and he can knock them back. But he has to be more than just a pocket pusher. Can you win over top and to the edge of interior blockers? If he can do that, I think he could have a nice 10-year career, get himself a second contract, earn himself some money year to year, just in that type of
maybe
role.
Buy a house too with that money.
Could maybe buy a house. And if he bought a house, where do you think he should go to insurance and things like that?
John, I think there's only one place to go. That's Briar Greaves Insurance. I mean, what a world that we live in, right? Where we've had COVID, strike this country and around the world. We've had a record number of named storms last year. John, we're getting ready to get into storm season again this summer. Wildfires out west. It's been wild when it comes to the insurance world, and with commercial property and homeowners insurance rates increasing across the industry due to these catastrophes, Briar Greaves Agency has got numerous carriers and options to help you and new and existing customers that are affected by these increases. So for life insurance, commercial insurance, homeowners insurance, auto insurance, boat insurance, only one place to turn. Briar Greaves. They're my insurance agent. Let them be yours. The folks at Briar Greaves Insurance are big fans of the Bucs and proud sponsors of the Pewter Report podcast here on pewterreport.com. Visit briargreavesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166.
One of the last guys on my list, Salim McNeil. He started off and we thought he might have been a little bit higher, but I watched tape after tape. I watched 2019. I watched 2020. I just didn't see a pass rusher at all. And as a run defender, he only has played in the A-gaps really the last 2 seasons. Right. You go back to 2018, there was a little bit more outside of that, but he was a young player. It wasn't, lately they saw he's an A-gap player who doesn't make many plays out of his box. Like, he doesn't have range. Doesn't make a lot of plays beyond the line of scrimmage. Doesn't make impact as a pass rusher.
John, he got a pick 6 last year. Let's give him credit for that.
That's true. There you go.
At least he got an 18-yard pick 6. Now
he is a fast nose tackle.
Yes, he is. Yes. Now, in the similarity he has with Vita Vea is they were both high school running backs. Lee McNeil was a running back in high school, but that's where the similarities end, because Vita Vea was drafted 12th overall for a reason. He is a freak of nature, and I think even the people that were screaming on draft day back in 2018, why would you take this guy? When there's Derwin James there. Well, I think we all realize the importance of Vita Vea. I think even Vita Vea's critics, talking to you, Warren Sapp, have come around to appreciate Vita Vea's game. Yeah, it's different. You can't compare Warren Sapp or even Brad Culpepper to what Vita Vea does. Different player, different defense, different time in modern football here. But when you look at Aleem McNeil, he has some size. That's about all I see that he has going for him. Size and strength, 6'2", 320 pounds. But John, I think there's been some better North Carolina State defensive linemen that have come out in recent years. Yeah. And I think I've seen this guy mocked as high as the second round. I think that's a little rich. I think maybe day 3 in the 4th round, that's just, maybe about where he belongs. Maybe
it's just a value thing. Like there's 3 guys right now who are free agents who are on a roster that they can do what he does. I mean, that's just he's a point of attack, run stuffing type of guy. Doesn't get moved around a lot, but also outside his space, he's not going to make many plays. Like he's different than he doesn't reset line of scrimmage, knock guys back, penetrate that much. He's just going to hold his space. He's a gap holder. That's what he is. And those kind of guys, that's nice to have. Just has to be the right value. If you pick him in the middle of the draft, okay, fine, cool. Yeah. Like you got yourself a good run stuffer who can play those early downs, but he's only going to give you, 300, 400 snaps a year. I think that's what he is, and I don't think he's much more than that. And so he did test pretty well, so there is some athleticism there.
Right.
Again, I just didn't see it on tape. Like there just was, to me, was no pass rush impact on tape.
And there was a little bit, but I think some of those sacks that he got in 2019, because he did have 5.5 sacks, but some of those were kind of cheap, where it was somebody that almost had him in the grasp and then let go, and then Aleem happened to be right place, right time. And there's something to be said for that, but it's not like he's going to create his own action, John. You saw that last year with just 1 sack in 11 games too.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. He's a type of player that is a dime a dozen. I mean, you can find these guys in every class, I think. Jaffele, I talked about him a little bit. Again, to me, with Jaffele, it's hard to win when you don't win with leverage and consistency in the NFL. You just kind of need that in the defensive line, or you have to be a great athlete. If to play his style of play, which is to slip between gaps, cross the face of guys, that type of a defense, it would need to be a slanting, heavy type of defense for Jaffele. Right. Then show me you have elite athleticism. He tested and his agilities were pretty poor at his pro day. And on tape, it's like
he didn't play last year. What were you doing last year? Right?
Yeah.
You gotta be training. You gotta show out for your pro day.
And maybe he was, and maybe that's all there is to him.
Maybe that's all there's to it. Yeah. But we saw a guy like Quinn Miners, right, from Wisconsin and Whitewater, who was a day 3 pick at best, right? That didn't even play last year because of COVID-19. It canceled the FCS pretty much altogether. Then he goes to the Senior Bowl and blows everybody away, completely ups the stock into day 2 territory. Then takes it a step further, and we saw all of the workouts where he's lifting up the logs and chopping down the trees and stuff like that. You can tell this guy spent a year on his craft, and he took snaps at center for the first time to prepare for the Senior Bowl. And he played guard. He played left guard exclusively at Wisconsin Whitewater. He was ready to play center and had some fantastic reps in the one-on-ones in the game, and has really pushed himself probably into the second round. And this is a guy that was just like Levi Onwuzurike, just like Jaffele, right? Didn't play last year, but improved himself and improved his draft stock. So it can be done. But like you said, John, maybe what you see is what you get with Jaffele.
Right, and that's the tricky thing with some of these guys, like Onwuzurike. I was talking to a scout the other day, and he was saying he just thinks 32 is a little bit rich for a guy like Onwuzurike. And he said one of the problems that scouts are kind of running into with Onwuzurike is that he's out there and he's at the Senior Bowl one day, and then he gets hurt, and then he goes into his pro day, and that's it. He's hammy, and now he's out for the pro day, and it just feels like the prospect. You didn't see him in 2020, and all that stuff kind of matters. I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick. Would be surprising to me. And so that's with Jaffele. Now he did do his workout and everything, and he plays hard. Like there's no question about it. He competes. He is a high-energy football player. I just think that if you play the way he plays, which is more to slip around guys and penetrate through gaps, and as a slasher type, you need to be pretty athletic in today's NFL to make that work consistently enough. You might get through. You might catch a team in a zone, a zone block, and you slip through a gap and you make a play. But consistently, teams are going to want your defense coordinator is going to want to see that you can do your job on a regular basis, and that's where he loses me.
Look at the production as a freshman: 3 sacks, 1 interception. Okay, a little splashy. He had a touchdown, a fumble recovery for a touchdown, made some plays. Second year in 13 games, just 3.5 sacks. So, if you have to have some splash athleticism, some splash production, and it just really wasn't there. And you look at Jaffele, he just doesn't have special size either, right? I mean, we talked about it before. He's 6'2", 305. That's very similar in size to Khalil Davis. The Bucs already have somebody like Jaffele on their roster already. I don't think they want another one necessarily.
Right. And then so McNeil to Togiai and McNeil to Jaffele, and then finally Bobby Brown was the last of my top 10. Bobby Brown, I don't know if any of these guys are Bucs guys, but Bobby Brown, I know we've talked about him for the Bucs. I think we even mocked him to the Bucs. The more I watched Scott, the more I thought I'm just not sure. Like this physicality just isn't there. I keep going back to what Bruce Arians says.
Every little step he takes is just.
Do you love football?
Do you love football?
I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying you don't see it when you watch him on tape. And I don't know how much face-to-face interaction they'll get with him, but I'm just saying they're going to want to see it on the tape, first of all. And he slouches. A lot of his reps as a pass rusher are just, he just barely churns his feet in place. It's disappointing because he only plays like 20 snaps a game.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't even play a huge snap load like in his whole career.
And he's got a fantastic frame, 6'4", 321, and he's got some muscle there. It's not just like all bad weight, right?
Telling you what, I mean, like I said in my article, if you could make a D tackle in a lab, you want him to look and move like Bobby Brown does, but you'd also want him to be better at football. That's where Bobby Brown just kind of there may be upside there, but I just think it's unlikely that you find it in the NFL. If he's around round 5, okay. But before that, I don't know.
6'4", 321, and at that size ran a 5.0 flat. That's not a bad time. But I think part of the issue is, and we saw this with Ronald Jones coming out of USC in the second round as a junior. When you look at Bobby Brown, he's coming out of Texas A&M. Probably, I think for his draft stock should have stayed in. Why do I say that? Because he's 20 years old. He won't be 21 until August 7th. He's a very young guy. And sometimes you see the young guys. Rojo was very young when he came in. He was the same way, 20 years old. And they just don't have the maturity. They don't have the work ethic and the maturity that goes with that. And so it's listen, it'd be the Bucs' prerogative to get Bobby Brown on a Zoom call and really kind of probe his character and ask him. Because, again, the 3 things they're looking for, here's the cheat code. Are you fast? Are you physical? Do you love football? Right? Are you passionate about the game? Because you look around the Bucs locker room now, there's plenty of passion. It starts with number 12 on the offensive side, and right behind it is number 13 with Mike Evans. You're not going to find more passionate players on the offensive side than that. And then on the defensive side, we talked about Jason Pierre-Paul, talked about Devin White, Antoine Winfield. These guys love football. Yeah. So you're looking for more of that.
Right. And I think out of this group, Bobby Brown's one of the ones that stands out as like, I just really don't know. From watching them, I really don't know. They need to figure that out for sure. The other guys I didn't really rank. I think we kind of, to me, if you're going pure nose tackles, I like Tyler Shelvin more than Marvin Wilson, probably a little more consistent of a player. Darius Stills is kind of like a sub-package interior rusher. Again, round 5, 6. You think you can get a guy like that that can give you 10 snaps in a blowout. If you think that's valuable enough, go for it with Darius Stills. The run game, I think he's going to get work, but he is quick. Yeah, he tested pretty well. I think he's a good dude. I think he will work hard from what I've heard. Jaylen Twyman, another one, athletic testing just took him out of consideration for me. It was just too bad. He was in the 0 and 1st percentile for agilities. I think and this is a guy who played around 270, so he took the year off, right? He didn't play last year. He opted out. 270, did you say? He played in the 270s, and now he worked his way up to 301 for his pro day. Jeez, I thought he was 290. Well, and you can see where he gained the size. It's just all upper body, and I think he loves to lift weights more than he loves football. Well, I know that he loves to lift weights because he got 40 reps on the bench press. Yeah, right. He's strong. But here's the thing: how do you at 301 pounds run a 5.39? Right? How does that happen? When you just mentioned the LSU kid, Tyler Shelvin, who like 5.38 or something. Yes, who ran a 5.38, just a tick faster at 350 pounds. Yeah. Right? Okay, 6'2", 350. So how do you let that happen? Okay, I don't know. That's what teams are going to ask him. I think they're going to talk to him about that. Now his 2019 tape was solid. I would have had him somewhere in those mid. But again, at some point, athletic testing has to reach a certain point, or you're outside my realm. And listen, he had the production, right? I mean, I think he had 9, 10 sacks, something like that at Pittsburgh. Yep. But at the same time, some of those were cleanup sacks because you had Rashad Weaver on one side, you had Patrick Jones on the other. That was a talented defensive line. So I just wonder sometimes when you take the sum of the parts, it's great. But when you take those parts individually, can they stand on their own and still be great? Sure. Right.
Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Some people have asked about Kyrius Tonger from BYU. Couple things took him off my consideration board. He's 25 years old. He's going to be 25 years old. He has 31-inch arms. He tested just very okay. A lot of the stuff that you'd want to see be more impressive was not. Production over the years, lots of playing. The production over the years was not that great. It was fine, but even if tape is great, again, at some point we cover team two. We got to just all right, we're not watching these guys. Like we do deep dives when we go. Like it's not. Scott's yelling at me, where's your article? I'm still trying to watch one more game to make sure, that's kind of how it goes with these guys. And so at some point you got to draw the line. 25 years old, 31-inch arms, athletic testing. 25 years old, even if your tape's great, man, like you're throwing around 19-year-olds. Like
Jason's drafted 2 defensive tackles in the 7th round.
Stevie
Tuipulotu, and Terry Beckner. Yeah. So that's the kind of player, right? That if you're looking for a rotational nose tackle type, throw him in the mix as a 6th or 7th round. They got 2 7th-round picks. He might not be there, but John, I think at age 25, and sometimes that's what gets these BYU players is that they go on the 2-year missions, they redshirt, and they're just an older prospect. And it doesn't mean they're not good players, right? You're going to see Zach Wilson, who's a BYU kid, go 2nd overall. It doesn't apply to everybody, right? But when it applies to certain positions, they want younger guys. They want guys that are 20, 21, 22, maybe 23. Sometimes even 23 is old for NFL teams.
Right, for sure. Yeah, so there's a lot of variables to it. The 2 guys I haven't seen that I still hoping to see, Tadarius Slayton from Florida and then Jonathan Marshall from Arkansas, who tested really, really well, I think. Want to get a look at those guys. Haven't heard much buzz about them, but just want to look at them, make sure I'm not missing anything. But there's your defensive tackle rankings for the 2021 class. It's not great, but you can find, if you wait, I wrote about this, pass on it in the early rounds. If you wait and you can find, I think you can get Marlon T on day 3, and you might be happy with what you early in day 3, and you might be happy with what you came away with. So it's all about finding the value and not reaching for players. You have no needs. Don't reach. Just wait.
John, we've had a fun week here on the Pewter Report podcast. We had you and I on Monday doing a simulated Bucs mock draft, a 7-round pick. On Tuesday, Mark Cook and I were on, and we had Cameron Brate as our, actually Camatron, as we're going to call him from now on. He was a fantastic guest. That was a really fun, lighthearted show. Go back and take a look at it. Lots of cool little nuggets in there, too, from Cam. So if you missed Tuesday's show, be sure to go to our YouTube channel, Pewter Report TV, and check that out. John, I've not had a chance to watch your show last night with Dane Brugler from The Athletic. He just came out with The Beast, which is his draft guide. I have gone through that, though. It's fantastic. So later today, I'm going to check out your show from last night. And then, of course, we wrap up the week with the defensive tackles preview. So it was a hell of a week here on the Pewter Report podcast. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. And if you missed any part of the show, if you missed any of the shows earlier this week, you can go to our YouTube channel, Pewter Report TV, and you can check that out. And you can also subscribe. We want you to hit that subscribe button. Also click on notifications once you subscribe. Whenever we go live sometimes, usually it's 4:00 in the afternoon Eastern time. Sometimes it's later at night, depending on our guest schedules. But every time you click on notifications, you'll get that notification and let you know when we're on live.
Right. Absolutely. It's going to be more great stuff as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft. Lots of fun and exciting stuff coming your way, as always, here on another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.